If I call that rock Al Cluith, I wonder if you know what I mean. If you take a look at it closely, you'll see there's fortifications over the top of it. And if you look at old prints of this castle, many, many years old, you'll find that there was a tower there. Fine upstanding tower. Now, people look at this thing and they pass it, and probably it's seen by more people than anywhere else in Scotland. And yet very few people ever look at it closely. It's kept up by the Department of the Environment, and looking up the rock, what we're seeing there is the governor's house. And in that house, the governor's job was to call out men if they were needed for war, to raise taxes, generally enforce the law, and collect a lot of revenue, because at one time, any ship coming up the Clyde could only get as far as here. Well, this is a very strange rocky gully to find a line of stairs up. But this leads to the key point in the rock from this side, the Portcullis Arch. Well, this wee peak I'm on is 240 feet high. It's only a mile in circumference. It's a lump of lava, a twin-peaked lump of lava. The ancients called it Dumbarton, the fort of the Britons, which you've probably recognised by now as Dumbarton, because this is the rock. And this bit of rock's not very big, but here, in fact, is everything that's made the Strathclyde region Strathclyde, because this was their stronghold. This is where their kings lived. Everybody's been imprisoned here at one time or another. Jacobites, Picts, even Britons themselves. And when you look at the fortifications of this place, you can see a whole epitome of the siege tactics of war. But quite apart from that, this used to be an island. Long before the Clyde was deepened, when the high tide came up, this was an island which made it easy to defend. The dredging of the Clyde, of course, did another thing. It took away the exclusiveness of Dumbarton, because until the Clyde was dredged just over 100 years ago, this was as far as ships could get up. So this was a springboard for attacking the Western Isles, for trading with France. Mary Queen of Scots sailed to France from here. In fact, there are so many events about this place, it would take too long to tell you from where I'm sitting here. But let's go and take a closer look at this remarkable rock. Well, this is the very highest point of the rock I'm on now, and the rail here is to keep people from falling over the edge. And right below us, very famous ships have been built. In fact, great discoveries in shipbuilding have been made. But maybe one of the most famous things here was the sailing away of the Cutty Stark, probably the finest clipper of all time. 140 feet high mast, 148 feet high masts, in fact. Breaking records all over the place, and it's still preserved. And here we're looking to the Highlands. We're looking up the River Leven. And this river with its soft water was one of the first industries that made Dumbarton possible as an industrial centre. Industry in this sense, in that the water was necessary for the bleaching and the print industry. And over 1,000 were employed on it. And then at a later stage, there was glassmaking. Now the glassmaking was very, very important indeed, because it was the kelp from the Western Highlands that was the basic raw material. So there from the Highlands it came. And from the Highlands came something else, whiskey, illicit whiskey. You know, when the population here was 3,000, I can't remember how many pubs there were, but there was something like 48, I think. selling whisky that the Highlanders were bringing in, made in wee stills, and the trade died when a revenue was put on it. The natural gap between the peaks of the rock made a natural fortification point, and right between them is the French prison, so called because it housed French prisoners in the Napoleonic Wars. And right beside it are the ruins of the Wallace Tower. Now, originally this was the way to the castle, but it was blocked up, and the route now is from the other side. I'm just going up onto the top because up there we're really on the edge of the bit known as the Beak. And the Beak's got a lot of interesting connections to it, but principally this hollow was where the garrison lived. Well, this is the Duke of Argyll's battery. A great spot this, big crags on the other side there. And that was the scene of a remarkable story. 400 years ago, right now in the spring, when Captain Crawford set out with 100 men from Glasgow, carrying ladders and hooks and all the rest of it, to climb the big wall of the castle and surprise the garrison. And they very nearly succeeded. In fact, it was a victory. But it very nearly wasn't, because by the time they got here, the sentry was up and about. Luckily, the mist came in, and as the garrison came out, Crawford managed to get a shot or two at them, then take over the artillery and blasted the other side of the rock where the troops lived. And they fled, and he took over the garrison. Great story. So you could almost call it the first commando raid in history. It's a startling thought that this castle, garrisoned from the 5th century, was still garrisoned in the 20th century. A period of continuous occupation, because in the last 2 wars it was an important point of coast defence. And also, when you think of it in the Strathclyde Britons' day, they had the Gaels at Dalriada to the northwest, the Picts to the east, and the Northumbrians to the south. But they held an enormous piece of territory from Dumbarton right down to what is now really the Solway and right through to the east coast. In the year 1018, it merged. It became part of Scotland.